Welcome to These Kids Can't Wait, discovering the world of rare disease. Hello, I'm Erin Hubbard, and I'm here with my co-founders, Laurel and Lorena, and together we launched the Lost Enzyme Project, a charity that is dedicated to supporting research and raising awareness about rare disease, specifically lysosomal storage disorders. We're thrilled to have you join us for our very first episode. Today, we'll be sharing a little bit about who we are and why we started this podcast and why raising awareness for rare disease is so critical. So let's get started by telling you a little more about how the Lost Enzyme Project came to be. Laurel, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if you can envision the three of us, we were really on separate journeys. Each kind of has a different beginning into the Lost Enzyme Project, and I think that that's kind of important to talk about a little bit and understand. Um, for me, Oliver is my oldest son, and my journey really began after he had his bone marrow transplant. And I really wanted to find, a seat at the table with rare disease for beta mastocytosis. And it was difficult to do because at that time, Oliver, was the only patient diagnosed in the United States. And there wasn't any singular advocacy group for beta mastocytosis. So, sort of step one in my recipe for, how do we create a foundation, a project, how do we get new medicine made, was really to find a way to advocate. And so for me, that started with joining the International Society for Mastocytosis and Related Diseases, the ISMRD. And that really allowed me not only to have better access internationally to what was happening in the beta mastocytosis community, but it essentially made me the hub for new families that were getting diagnosed. And so that's how I met you, Erin, and I met you, Lorena, because, when you were diagnosed, Erin, you reached out to me and we had a conversation, and similarly, Lorena, when Dean was diagnosed, we were able to hook up and talk about, you know, essentially what we knew so far about beta mastocytosis.
And for our listeners, will you tell them what ISMRD is and what it stands for?
Yeah. So it is the International Society for Mastocytosis and Related Diseases, and it supports 9 glycoprotein disorders. And these are ultra orphan, meaning ultra rare disorders. And beta mastocytosis is one of those.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we all connected, and I think we have a shared passion. Um, do you guys remember when you first talked to me?
I remember when I first talked to you, Laurel. It was the day before Skylar's first birthday, and you kind of explained to me what beta mastocytosis was in more detail than what the doctor could tell me about beta mastocytosis, and that was a life-changing day. We realized the magnitude of her condition and what life was going to look like, going forward. And yeah, it had a huge impact on us.
Yeah, kind of similar. I think when Dean was diagnosed with beta mastocytosis after his genetic counseling appointment with Dr. Kimonis, I was really grateful that they kind of did a blast email to kind of let other geneticists out there know that they had a patient. And one of those doctors was connected to Laurel, and they were very helpful by saying, "Hey, why don't you connect with this other parent?" And again, that was the same night I think Dean was diagnosed that I reached out to Laurel and kind of was just like, "Hey," couldn't even pronounce the disease at that point, but kind of wanted to reach out and just bring it up. And it was really great phone conversations. And, kind of like you, Erin, where a lot of explaining, a lot of trying to, a lot of questions that I had, obviously, as kind of just figuring it out. But I think it's a really great way that we kind of came together that way. Again, like kind of Laurel being the hub.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I mentioned, Dr. Kimonis I was able to connect Dr. Kimonis and let her know, hey, there's other patients out there. Because during my during our genetic counseling appointment, she said she wasn't aware of anyone, yet. She said there might be one, but I'm not sure. So I was able to connect her with emails and saying, hey, this is a parent. Her name's Laurel, her son's Oliver. You may want to connect with her. And I think that's kind of what started our journey, down this path.
Yeah. I remember talking to you guys, and it was such a weighing thing that I didn't want to scare you, and yet I knew the information. It's really hard to digest. And I think what also complicates things is that with Dean and Skylar and Oliver, with this disease, the phenotype ranges so greatly, meaning like all of our kids are at a different place and they're all presenting a little bit differently. And so we're all in a little bit different situation, even though we're in the same boat. And it can be so hard to have these discussions because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot going on behind them.
Yeah. And at what point did Kimonis jump in and decide she was going to help us create a treatment for beta manocytosis?
Well, I think that, once we had all connected, I was going to be going to the World Symposium for Rare Disease, which was going to be my first time attending that event in 2023. And I was going as a ISMRD representative. And so I had some meetings, set up with that through the ISMRD with various entities. And it was really exciting because Virginia Kimonos was going to be there. And I knew from talking to Lorena that, she was really interested. She had expressed a desire, to work on the disease because she had a clinical lab as well as, being, I think she sees outpatient, doesn't she, Lorena?
Yeah, Dean's one of her
Yeah. Oh,
patients.
duh. Duh, Laurel. Too much going on in my brain. Anyway, and so it's kind of a wild story because we get down there and first day was awesome, goes according to plan. Second day is great. And in the meantime, I'm getting phone calls from home, and all of my boys are horribly sick with a stomach bug. And so that third day, I remember I was meeting with Kiesi, and I started to feel queasy myself. And it threw the rest of the week off because I got horribly sick and I was confined to my hotel room. And I had set up a meeting with Virginia to kind of talk about next steps and, what she needed, what she envisioned. And By this point, I had already had this really wonderful meeting before I got sick with JCR. And I was able to it was just serendipity. I was seated next to the vice president of JCR, Matthias Schmidt, and we had such a lovely conversation. And I just, sometimes it's so hard to feel like someone gets what you're saying or they really understand where you're coming from with rare disease because it's such an extreme that most people, even clinicians, often don't understand what we're facing. And he was so empathetic, and there was such a sense of being seen, which it's just an incredible feeling to have that sense of connection with someone. And so he had said, Laurel, I can't promise you anything, but I'm going to do what I can to help you. And we were actually there at a meeting for fucosidosis, a natural history study that JCR was starting for that. And, they had done some enzyme replacement therapy. And so I was like, okay, well, this is great. There's this connection. So fast forward, I'm finally feeling better. I was able to reconnect with Virginia just off the fly. We were able to just meet, and it was the day before I was flying out. So we're sitting outside meeting, and it's in Florida. So it was really hot and we were hungry. And so we went inside to get some food. And who do I see walking out of one of the large conference rooms? It was Matthias Schmidt. And so I grabbed Virginia and I said, come on, let's go. I'm gonna introduce you to, because I thought if I could get these two together, magic could happen potentially, right? You've got these two amazing, incredible, smart, motivated people. And so they met, and that was kind of the start of things, really. I mean, as far as having an enzyme replacement come on board,
Mm-hmm.
that was the start of those talks.
And that's life changing for our families. So we're so grateful that you made those connections and you were willing to go outside your comfort zone and run after, uh, Matthias. And that's one thing I noticed at the last convention too, was you're like, oh, we need to catch that person. Let's go talk to him. And you're the one running after them and making connections. So you're an inspiration to us all. We're so grateful that you
Oh,
did that
thank
because
you.
now Kimonos Labs is helping to create this enzyme replacement therapy, and JCR Pharmaceuticals is delivering the enzyme to us, and we're in the mouse model stage. Lorena, you should tell us more about the mouse model stage. I think it's fascinating, and you have all the answers on that.
I don't know if I have all the answers, but yeah, like so from what I know is that again, kind of I think we've been really lucky. I know we were kind of contacting I know it's kind of tasked to try to find these beta manocytosis created mice, because there was some papers. I had called around and I was able to find some one of the universities that had still had some frozen embryos. And so we were trying to kind of working out, but that's a very big timing thing. Like you have to be ready for these mouse embryos to be thawed, shipped, reanimated or how whatever they call it. I kind of forgot. But and if something goes wrong or if it's stuck in shipping, they could potentially be like, damaged. So we were kind of in that process. And of course, just through papers and stuff, um, one of the Dr. Kimonis' lab members was able to they were able to reach out to a different group at another university to kind of find out. And they actually had live beta manocytosis mice breeding. So they were kind of working on that. They had been working on that. So thankfully, they were willing to give us a couple pairs of male and female mice so that they could breed. And so that actually makes it a lot easier as far as, again, not having to try to transfer embryos. We were able to ship them to the university, to Dr. Kimonis' lab. And at this stage that we saw, Erin, that we were kind of saying was exciting, we were able to see that they were put them together in breeding pairs. There was litters of mice kind of happening. And then, talking to them, I found out that, they've done some genetic testing and now they have, exactly what I believe, what homozygous pairs that they're breeding now to make sure that, that we get mice that are similar or very close to beta manocytosis disease state. So we're moving fast.
Yeah, and it was really exciting to see that. It wasn't real to me until I saw that. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, those are beta mice. Like it's really happening. This treatment is really developing and we are going to have an enzyme replacement therapy in the next couple years." Um
Yeah.
so
You might see me crying over the mice here and there if I work with them. These are our kids. That's what I keep saying,
they are. Are we
Mhm.
allowed to name them? Do scientists name their mice?
I give them, I don't know, not usually. Usually it's numbers or some type of identification,
Oh,
but
that's probably good.
mhm.
And we're grateful for Kimonos Labs and that whole team that's working on the project. They were really nice and it was fun to meet them as well. So I think it would be good for our listeners to hear a little bit about our families and our children who are affected with beta manocytosis. Um, so, Lorena, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Dean?
Yeah, so Dean, so as far as like his diagnosis and stuff, Dean does have some hearing loss, and that's kind of how we came about this, right? He suddenly at like 5 years old, he didn't pass his hearing screening where he had passed his newborn and he had passed hearing testing when he was about 2.5 because kind of not meeting his word counts. So yeah, and he was diagnosed at around 5, turning 6 with hearing loss, which kind of made me go, well, that's odd. Why? So of course you go on like Dr. Google and you start
Right?
Googling, and of course that's it's good and bad because obviously you get like a host of different things that are telling you it could be this, but of course that turns on like any parents, mom bells, like, oh my god. So I called this pediatrician, was like, hey, I'm reading all these things and I'd like to get Dean genetically tested. And so she was very on board with it. She's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So we got him genetic tested, and that's how we came out with the beta manocytosis diagnosis. So again, like I said, after his genetic screening, that's how again he was diagnosed. Dr. Kimonis was his geneticist, and she did tell me kind of what we talked about how he's the only patient that she's ever seen and that how rare it is. But, aside from his, diagnosis, Dean, he's just honestly, comparing, I mean, I know Erin, you're a boy mom. I think he's just a regular 10-year-old boy. Literally talks about, oh gosh, I don't even want to say it sometimes, but like farts and all the great things and all the new words. And you know how many times I have to hear Giat all day, but he's just like, again, I'm very fortunate that he is very active. Right now it seems that his progression is just the hearing loss and some learning difficulties, but nothing that isn't managed right now in school with an IEP, and he has additional speech therapist, and he does have a lot of help, which I'm really grateful for in the school district, and and his doctors. But right now he's in baseball, so he's they're starting baseball season, and he's going to practice, and learning again relearning how to like hit the ball and run the bases. He likes sports. He's really into now, which I hate as a mom, but he's really into video games right now. He's in that age, so we have to kind of accept that. So, of course, grandma and grandpa bought him video games
He's
sets
working on
and
his fine motor skills,
working
right?
on his fine motor skills,
Yeah.
and so yeah. But he keeps asking me if he can play GTA, and I'm like, no. But again, that's kind of where he's at, and I'm again I have to. My husband has to remind me, or had to remind me, because again, you can't go like any parent who's kind of hearing these things and seeing them too. Like I said, and kind of seeing what could happen. You kind of do go down a very sad place, and that's I'm lucky that my husband reminds me. He's like, I get it, but you also have to see where he's at now, and we just have to let him be uh, you know, a crazy, silly 10-year-old boy. And just, if we have to make modifications, we will. But, so that's kind of where we're at. And, Dean's, like I said, Dean's just doing really well, and, just being really silly. And I'm really enjoying this age right now, actually.
Yeah. And I don't think it was a coincidence that we found each other within a year. I think it's a tender mercy that we were able to connect when we did, and all our kids, were diagnosed when they were. Because for me, I was going through not just a hard time dealing with Skylar's diagnosis. We were also trying to adopt her, and it was nice having other moms with kids with these conditions to connect with and work through some of these issues with. But like I said, Skylar came into our home when she was 1 month old. She came straight from the hospital, the NICU, and the DCS told us, we have a perfectly healthy baby girl for you. She was abandoned. Can we bring her to you within the hour? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Bring her on over. And we were so excited to finally have, that little girl. And she was 4.5 pounds. And I felt like I was going to break her when I first picked her up. She was so itty bitty. And just looking at her, you could kind of tell something's not right. We thought maybe it was Down syndrome. She kind of had a little bit of that bossing, and the prominent eyebrows. So, we wondered about her family history. But then a couple months after she came into our home, we were watching the Super Bowl, and we realized she was sleeping through one of the most chaotic times, where all my boys were screaming at the TV and cheering and jumping off the couch. And she was asleep through all of it. And that's when we kind of realized, okay, she's got some hearing loss, obviously. Let's get her into the doctor. And then it was a couple weeks after that, we were swimming at my friend's house, and we were putting Skylar in her swimsuit to get her ready to go into the pool. And we saw all these red spots on her belly. And my friend's like, that doesn't look right. I would get her in. So now the pediatrician had two, odd phenomena going on. She had hearing loss and she had cherry red spots. Let's get you into geneticist. The geneticist did the genome sequencing test and came back with beta manocytosis. And even the geneticist is like, there's really nothing I can tell you about this other than what is, on the internet and Google. As far as I know, there's no other patients and there's no cure. And that was it. And so then I did a little research and I found ISMRD, and I think I sent an instant message, or I messaged um, somebody at ISMRD who got me in contact with Laurel, and Laurel explained it all to me. This is what it is. This is what you need to expect, and which is heartbreaking to hear for the first time. And after that, we just wanted to do everything we could for Skylar and make sure she had the happiest life. And we were determined to adopt her and make sure she had everything she needed. And so when we heard there was a chance to develop this treatment, we were on board 100%. You know, we want to stop the progression. So as of today, she's got hearing loss, she's legally blind, and she has dysphagia. And she, about 6 months ago, she was no longer able to eat, and just chronic infections. And a couple months out of the year, she'll get something called erythromelalgia, which is burning in her hands and feet. It's a form of peripheral neuropathy. And so she's usually on a lot of pain medication when that hits. So, like I said, we want to do everything we can to kind of um, stop this condition in its tracks, and hopefully that's what ERT, enzyme replacement therapy, will do. And we've talked back and forth about doing the bone marrow transplant, but Skylar's so fragile. It's so hard to make that decision whether or not to do it, just because there is a chance of losing her during that process. So, Laurel, tell us a little bit about Oliver and a little bit about his bone marrow transplant.
Okay. So Oliver is the sweetest boy. He's got a huge heart. He's just he's a real warrior. He has been through so much in such a short amount of time, and a lot of it's been really difficult and heartbreaking. But he meets every day with a smile on his face. He's got a wonderful sense of humor. Um, even a pretty sophisticated sense of sarcasm, and he loves his life. He loves going to school. He loves to travel. He's super passionate about basketball. That's kind of his main focus right now. And the LA Lakers, and really everything California and LA specifically is for Oliver. He loves the Rams, but basketball is his primary love and focus. He loves LeBron James. I mean, LeBron is the king in our home and will always reign, which is hilarious because my husband is a lifelong Celtics fan. So there's a lot of good back and forth about that. Um, and Oliver's journey is he was diagnosed when he was 4 at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and he was referred to have a bone marrow transplant in Minneapolis. And so he was transplanted at 4. Everything happened so fast. He was diagnosed, HLA typing done, and he was transplanted within 3 months of diagnosis, which is just kind of a wild timeline. And came through that, and since that time, I do think that the transplant, and that was the first done in medical history as well. And he was the first person diagnosed in the US. So we just didn't have a lot of information at that time. And it's kind of been like a learn as you go type of thing. Um, and since that time, he's continued to progress through the disease. And so it can be difficult to look at old videos and pictures because he was really independent, walking without any type of assisted device. And so since that time, Oliver now he uses a walker or like a motorized scooter, walker for very short distances, but is having a difficult time standing. Um, and so really needs assistance with most transitions and moving. And I typically push him on his rollator around the house. I mean, the walker he's using again just for really short distances. His hearing's fine. He's never had any hearing loss like your kids. Um, Legally blind as well, like Skylar. But really, most of the symptoms are gross motor, and then some learning disability there as well. But he really makes the most of everything. He does not complain. He's very aware that he is having more difficulty moving, and he does get really frustrated. But he's just an inspiration because, um, sorry, I'm going to get emotional. He's been through so much more than most people will ever be going through in a lifetime, you know, especially with health related stuff. And he just powers through it, and it's I'm always in awe of Oliver, you know, because he's amazing. He's an incredible kid, and he's so kind. He's everybody's friend.
Yeah, I love watching videos of him because you can see his personality. I know his body is affected and it's really hard for him to get around, but he has so much personality and you can see it in his expressions and his responses. And I think all of our kids have um, these incredible personalities and are so inspirational, which is why I want to tell these stories and want to get these stories out there. And this is why we've created the podcast too, is to spread awareness.
Yeah, and
Um,
Erin, you talked about, I know you talked about Skylar's diagnosis, but you really haven't talked about, like I said, when I saw Skylar, she was just a wild little toddler running around.
Oh, you have no idea. She is a fireball. She has the biggest personality and she's really goofy. She loves to tease us. And I think it's because she has four older brothers and she loves to wrestle them with dual sensory loss. She has this intense craving for sensory input. So she's constantly climbing on things, and we have this retaining wall in our house and she likes to climb on it and jump off into bean bags. We've got a sensory swing in the middle of our living room. Forget aesthetically pleasing furniture and household. It's how can we wear this girl out? We have a bouncy house in our backyard and she has more energy than the four boys put together, and she's hilarious.
She
So
rules your
she
house, right?
she rules the house and she knows it. So that's why it's so hard sometimes to see her when she's sick or has a regression, because we know that she's a fighter and she's a fireball. So yeah.
So, Erin, where did the Lost Enzyme Project start? Like, when you're thinking back, at what time frame, like, did it all begin to come
So I
together?
actually remember where I was. I remember having a phone call with you guys while we were in Utah, and I was in the office in Utah, and we were coming up with a way to fund this treatment that Dr. Kimonis and JCR Pharmaceuticals is creating for us. And we were debating the name and the logo and our mission statement. So it was 2 summers ago, correct? Yeah, it was 2 summers ago. And from there, we were determined to help fund, the development of this enzyme replacement therapy and support the kids with this condition. So that's when the Lost Enzyme Project was born. And since then, we've come a long way. We've raised about 160, almost $170,000. We still have a little ways to go. We're trying to get over that $500,000 mark. But we're really excited for what we have in the future coming up. We've got some exciting events, and we are launching a new website and this podcast. We've hired on some amazing people to help our team. So we have Laurel and Lorena and I as co-founders, but we also have a patient identification team, and they're making a lot of progress. We have a patient advocacy team who's going to be help supporting the patients that we find in our current patients. And we've got a media team. And yeah, I'm really excited about where we're going and what we're going to accomplish. And I'm excited for this podcast because I somebody recommended we do it, and I was really nervous about being on a camera and having my voice recorded. I don't like speaking in public. And so I told my friend, no, it's not going to happen. I'm not starting a podcast. I'm too anxious. And the more I've done it, and once I did jump into it, the more I've done it, the more I've enjoyed it, because I'm learning so much about patient stories and everything that goes into creating a treatment. I've really enjoyed speaking with the doctors who are working on it, and you're getting to know them um, on a deeper level. And I'm really excited to talk to some of the pharmaceutical companies and some of our donors who have contributed, and why they give. And because it's so important to us, it means so much to us that everybody is involved in helping us um, meet our goal and create this treatment. These kids can't wait. Every day, Skylar progresses a little more, Oliver progresses a little more, and we want to see them succeed in the future and participate in those sports and the things that they like to do and roughhouse with their brothers and sisters. So, yeah.
Yeah. And with that, I want to say thank you so much to everyone listening for joining us for this first episode. Um, we promise it will get better as we do more. If you'd like to learn more about the Lost Enzyme Project or support our mission, you can find us at thelostenzymeproject.org. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Until next time, take care, and remember, these kids can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on These Kids Can't Wait. Every story shared brings us one step closer to awareness, advocacy, and action. If you've been inspired, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode.
To learn more about the Lost Enzyme Project or donate to the cause, you can visit our website, Instagram, or Facebook page. Those links will be provided in the show notes below. Thank you again, and remember, these kids can't wait, but together, we can make a difference.